Peace. Welcome to another session of the Press, the P.R.E.S.S Prisoners Release Education Sanity Series podcast, #1 podcast in America for reentry prevention and intervention. Right now, we sticking to the topic on who is to blame or who is responsible for children committing crime in America.
Topic of the day. Who is responsible for children committing crime in America? Only on the P.R.E.S.S Podcast. Let's go. This episode of the Press is sponsored by the e-firm Don't Let Your Loved Ones Become an American Prisoner. Visit us at efirm.org.
Right now, I have with me one of my brother's close dear friends, and also I consider him like family, as well as many other people I might have brought up here to this podcast that you will possibly see in the future or have already seen. But right now, I want to give him time to introduce himself to the world.
How y'all doing? My name is Hakeem. I'm here to talk to y'all today about the truth on prisoners and juveniles being incarcerated and my duration during incarceration.
True indeed. Yeah, and with that being said, this is one of my close brothers once again, who I have actually traveled in behind those prison walls with prior to becoming a free man and able to get out in society away from behind those prison gates and walls and barbed wires that actually confine you physically. We walked behind those walls together prior to both of us being actually released from that stage of our lives. With that being said, this brother has actually done 22 years of his adult life in the Virginia Department of Corrections, DOC system. And he's also, prior to doing 22 years in that system, he was locked up for 7 years as a juvenile, because you received a juvenile life sentence from my understanding. Is that correct?
True indeed.
What do you think you didn't learn as a juvenile that caused you to suffer to recidivism as an adult and go back to prison for 22 years?
I don't believe that the school system abroad provided the right tools and education that I needed, as a adolescence to achieve the things that I needed in life. So I believe they failed to provide those substances, the educational substances that the kids need in order to keep them on the right track. I was provided crime, I was provided drugs, I was provided all the wrong things to attain an economical status here in America. And my ways of going about doing it was prone against me or to me as a child. So I walked the path thinking this was the path to walk, but the whole time it wasn't.
Okay. So you saying you was giving crime, so you wasn't born with crime, you was giving crime, is what you're telling me. Okay.
When I was a youth, a teenager, I went to high school. It wasn't a place for me to go there to get educated. It was a place for me to go there to learn crime. I hung with the crowd that did criminal activities. That we sold drugs, we robbed people, we do all these type of things in the school.
Why do you think you made that choice to hang with those particular people?
I felt like those people was the people that was the successful people. And I say that because I watched my parents struggle, with occupations, labor occupations. I watched them come home from the shipyard saying, "Man, I'm working these hard jobs, man. It's hurting my back. It's making me feel bad." So as a child, I said to myself, I don't want to go through that.
And I can relate to that.
I don't want to go through that.
And not only do you not want to go through it, you don't want to see your parents going through it.
Exactly.
And as a young man that viewing yourself as a responsible man, you kind of step out into the world trying to protect them from that struggle. Exactly. That you identifying with.
Exactly.
And you saying you don't want to go through it, and with having love for your parents, you also not wanting to see them go through it, kind of make you bend towards whatever way is presented to you to provide economics on the level for your family where your mom or dad, for instance, won't have to go through that struggle. Cause I know my mom, she literally worked constantly in a peanut factory to try to take care of me and my sisters and brothers. And not only to try, but she took care of us. We didn't know we was in poverty. We didn't understand that our craving for riches was going to lead to us developing a lifestyle or activity that would be criminal.
Yeah.
We didn't really know that. So that's something we had to learn had happened to us. And when I say we, meaning me, you, and a lot of other people that's in our shoes, not only males but females that's in our shoes as well that go through the incarceration process. And we all, because we understand the incarceration process, like when you look at the person, individual sitting in that cell right there, he's not dressed like a thug. He's dressed like with a suit on, because that is a clear picture of the fact where incarceration, it helps lead to me talking about the fact that incarceration a lot of times is not just based on an image that people see, but it's a lot of times it's mental. It's not just a physical thing. And before people become incarcerated physically, they're usually mentally incarcerated. And some of those mental incarcerations come from some of those things you just mentioned. Right. Because no child is born with a criminal mindset. Right. That's a developed mentality. And I consider it being a manufactured mentality. And the manufacturers of that mindset is the television, the radio music that they take in that's really toxic and not really based on love, but based around hate and speak more towards hate and destruction than construction. So, man, it's crazy, because what you're telling me is basically, as a juvenile, all these things that led you to developing this criminal mindset didn't change once you got locked up for 7 years as a juvenile.
Nah, I mean, off and on, as a juvenile, I would be placed in the detention centers. Mm-hmm. And in the detention centers, it's a word exacerbate, meaning it furthered the criminal activity. Mm-hmm. Because they throwing me in these juvenile facilities, whether they're group homes, detention centers, or whatever. I'm not learning nothing. Right. The only thing I'm doing is getting placed inside a cell with another juvenile who once I probably was a thief. Now I'm learning how to steal cars. Now I'm learning how to load guns.
And how old was you then?
13 and 12.
13 and 12.
It is further.
When you first got locked up, you were 13.
The first time I was incarcerated ever in my lifetime, I just turned 12 years old.
Just turned 12 years old.
Just turned 12 years old. And ever since then, we've been back and forth. 3 months here, 6 months here. And it's been back and forth until that point it got when I was 16 years old. They said, hey, try them as an adult. See how that works. They throw me in a prison at 16 years old. Mm-hmm. They took me from the Newport News detention home to the Hampton City jail. Mm-hmm. They placed me in there. I was one of the youngest dude to go in there. And at that time, they wasn't really trying dudes as adults. Right. So it was something new.
They certified you.
They certified me, so they didn't know what to do.
They tried to certify me, but go ahead.
And they take me, and they put me in this block. They don't put me in the misdemeanor block. They put me in the baddest block they got. Throw me in there. Say, hey, go ahead. You know what I'm saying? Throw me in the block. And I sat in there. I was 130 pounds. 5'3", 5'4". They throw me in the cell. In the block. Dudes sleep on the floor and everything. Yeah. And at that time, them jails, you got to fight for your bunk.
That's right.
Or you can sleep on that float. Mm-hmm. So you got to fight for them trays.
Right.
Or you ain't eating.
Right.
You want to wash your clothes, you got to fight for that. Right. You got to fight for it.
Right.
And here I'm a kid. I got to fight grown men.
Right.
They don't care nothing about that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They throw me in there. And that furthers it. It also made me angry. Mm-hmm. So now I got a complex. I'm angry now. I feel like these people really don't care about me. Right. They throw me here like this and treat me like this, but these people, they don't care about me.
You feel ignored.
I feel ignored. I feel abandoned.
Right.
I feel discredited.
Right.
So now I start developing my mind like, hey, this what y'all want? I'm gonna give it to you. I'm gonna give it to you to the max.
Right.
So the whole time in there, I'm thinking of more ways to further my criminal activities.
Right. You thinking of how to become a better
criminal.
And the thing is, that's not something that America is blind to. They're not blind to the fact that incarceration over the years had led to people being incarcerated as a juvenile and as an adult suffering to recidivism by being reincarcerated as an adult after the juvenile trial of incarceration.
Right.
So when I say they're not blind to it, we smart people in America. We know why the mind formed wrong. We know why the frontal lobes become damaged. And it's a reason why it's not being fixed, because it can be fixed globally. It can definitely be fixed nationally within America. But there has to be some real control over how this media is presenting certain information to the mentality as these youth are developing. Parents can only control but so much, which parents do still have a responsibility. That don't denounce them from being some of the blame of why youth in America go to prison.
Right.
So this is my thing. Everything you said, I can relate, because when I got incarcerated after doing a drive-by shooting at 15 years old, and I was in that situation, I didn't have a chance to really repair my damaged psychology due to anger and certain humiliation I had experienced as a child that I didn't really understand at that point when I was presently shooting people and doing drive-by shootings on people, police coming to the high school, picking me up from high school, all type of just stories I could go on and on about involvement with incarceration that led to me being incarcerated as an adult. So, and there was a lot of things that responsible parties in our society ignored because of ignorance and in some cases intentional. See, right now, the E.F.E.R.S, for instance, the Ex-Felon Entrepreneurship Retail Museum, that museum project alone, I produced that because I remember being ignored and feeling like nobody cared, like you said. And that basically I had to go even harder in my criminal activities to be somebody because I didn't fit the criteria in my mind to get those jobs as a lawyer, as a prosecutor, as a judge. In my mind, that didn't register in my DNA due to the upbringing I had. I didn't know how angry I was from the child abuse of being beat on and seeing your parents getting hit on. And I don't know if you went through that, but see, that anger started before I was incarcerated. That mindset was before being placed behind the cell. There was certain things that just didn't provide the education that I needed to learn about the reasons I should not think in that capacity of a criminal, and how successful I could be by thinking in a higher form of thinking. But that higher form of thinking couldn't be accomplished without some form of knowledge itself.
Right.
The E.F.E.R.S itself, that museum, it takes the human being through a process of seeing themselves.
Right.
In seeing themselves not only in the higher light, but viewing themselves in the possible lower light that they're living in. Right. You can't change a person's output and outlook on life if you don't first get them to identify how they're looking at life wrong.
Right.
So through the museum, those 12 chapters give them a reality check and a chance to take some accountability on how they may be behaving and how they may be looking at life when it comes to the criminal mindset. And how there's a criminal that's actually designing the mindset. You have gatekeepers even in the music industry that's basically pretty much locking and shutting down any empowering news or words or rap that would actually educate the people of society out of feeling like they just freaks and barbarians and Vikings and criminals. Yeah, the Vikings had an era. If you understand the history of development of different cultures, one of the eras of the Vikings was to basically raid and rob and kill for possessions of that they felt had worth to it. Gold, silver, whatever that had any worth. So they invaded countries and they did what they did. Same thing happened today. You got people invading different territories and making an excuse to invade them. But you know, at the same time, the Vikings was in survival mode. If you're gonna turn a youth into a Viking, a savage, through television and radio, then you already done had enough experience on what a Viking act like to know what you're gonna get. So when you got locked up as an adult, what changed? Because now, what are you doing now?
Now, I'm just working and trying to strive for perfection.
How long you been out?
I've been out 13 months now. You know, and it was a struggle when I first came out because I had to readjust to a society that I never knew. So, you know, I've been in that cell for so long, everything I went through, I went through inside that prison. So, and I'm saying that the development of turning from a man child to that man. You know what I'm saying? So now that I reached that stage of being that man and I developed that understanding, I was able to approach life with a different approach. So like now I'm out here, I'm trying to work, I'm striving, I'm building me a business up, I'm doing the things the right way. I gotta take baby steps because I'm coming a long way, but I'm doing it.
What'd I tell you when you first came home?
Tell me it's gonna be hard.
I tell you it's gonna be hard.
Yeah.
But what I tell you, it's gonna be for you.
Yeah.
I told you it ain't gonna be easy. It's gonna be hard, but you gonna make it.
Yeah.
And I told you, it's a reason that I told you was gonna make it. You've been out here 13 months.
Yeah.
Right now, you got a car.
Car.
That had how many cars?
3 of them.
And how many? And the one you got now is very what?
New.
And very reliable.
Yeah, damn
is
right.
my point.
Yeah.
And you have how many jobs since you've been out?
About 7.
You got 3 now. All right. So you have 3 jobs now. You have the table set up at the store. You working at the restaurant over there, and you have your other job, Amazon. So check this out. And I'm saying that to say this. Even when you got released from another job because they did your background check.
Right.
What'd I tell you?
Yeah, that was the one that broke me down right there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because I worked hard. I worked so hard that people wanted to hire me on.
Permanently.
And they ran my background check. Somebody did 21 years ago, 22 years ago. They told me they fired me from the whole job.
Mm-hmm.
I was out there looking crazy.
Yeah.
Cause for doing the right thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it broke me down. I almost backtracked on it. I was like, what?
Yeah.
How I get punished for doing the right thing?
Right. But you know what? What do you think kept you from backtracking?
I know I had to keep going forward. I know I can't go backwards. Number one, I ain't going back to prison. I know I can't do that. So I know that in life, when you climb up the ladder of success, you're gonna run across a couple of stumbling blocks. There's gonna be some challenges.
But knowing that you ain't going back to prison is one of your biggest accomplishments.
That's my biggest.
That's one of your biggest motivations.
Yes.
And see, even when it comes to grounding yourself in society, see, that's an affirmation that you set in your forefront. That is an affirmation, bro. Right. You got different tools to grounding that I like to talk about, but that's one of them. Having a strong affirmation. You say, I know I ain't going back to prison.
I ain't going back to prison.
I know I ain't going back to prison. You could say it silently. You could repeat it out loud, but it brings you to a consciousness in the here and now.
Yeah, every time I'm about to do something, or I think I'm about to do something, I say that. I ain't going back to prison.
Right. That's your affirmation.
I ain't going back to prison.
I heard it in you when you said it.
I say I'm not going back to prison. Every time I look at it, I'm not going back to prison.
Because when I asked you the question, basically towards what kept you from, I was gonna ask you the question, what kept you from actually making the decision to go back? But you said, I'm not going back to that. And when you said it with conviction of surety, like,
yeah,
that's your affirmation, and you stick there, you roll with that, because people that have affirmations, they don't know that these affirmations help them ground themselves. Most people become unaware of the activity in the here and now, And they lose themselves in the here and now because of that. When you're aware that in the here and now, I'm not going back to prison, you'll keep trying, you'll keep visioning, you'll keep being active, you'll keep staying active. And see, a lot of the blame that falls on leadership in our society, where it concerns youth going to prison and still not actually becoming educated enough not to be reincarcerated as an adult, a lot of that blame falls on the fact that there's no real education about grounding and anger management until a person get in trouble.
I could have been talking to a judge instead of talking to you right now had I blew his brains out for what he did. Just the other day, I had a guy pull out a gun on me, you know, and I had to really humble myself in that situation. And I'm not gonna say I did the best job at it, but I didn't do the worst job at it either, you know, because I got a choice. Just like you got choices. We decisive by nature. You know, release yourself right now from that trauma. Because that's trauma, man, and that traumatized thinking is what leads to situations that's pretty much harmful to your forward. And you may not never get that freedom back if you let somebody take it. So address it now. Be proactive and not reactive, man. Study the course seriously. And for now, I'm gonna run this Brooklyn Bridge to get some of these toxins about my body. I don't really like wearing people's clothes, but hey, guess what? I'm waiting on that sponsorship. Where the sponsors at? So I can do this all day and say these youth. You gotta keep up with the boss. Guess what? This is all part of good sanity. You can't defeat yourself now. That's insanity. Defeating yourself is insane. So guess what I need you to do? Claim your sanity. Reclaim it. Reclaim your personal power. Come on. Yeah, MIND. Mind over matter. Most importantly, the director. Stay positive and stay focused, man. Peace, P.E.A.S.S. Positive education always causes elevation. Remember that.
Once a person gets in trouble, now everybody want to find solutions to their problems, as if they don't see the problem before the reaction that takes place.
Right.
Before the reaction that has to take place after the crime is committed.
Right.
Due to what's the underlying effects of that crime that a lot of people don't want to talk about. This child feel humiliated. This child been molested or been beat on or been, you done moved him into a neighborhood where you got a surrounding group of ignorant youth that don't know nothing, ain't taught nothing by their parents working all day or ignoring them all day, getting high, doing whatever they doing, and ain't making sure the children are in a responsible environment, at least where they're learning properly techniques about grounding. Because I could teach my 13-year-old daughter right now on how to ground herself. She might not use every technique, but it's gonna start to become knowledge on her brain. Yeah. And that knowledge gonna start becoming wisdom once she begin to apply it. And from her applying that knowledge, she gonna gain understanding about why I would teach her that as she go through some experiences and start to use it. Right. Yeah, because these breathing techniques, you got breathing techniques, they can be taught to a youth. Different breathing techniques. Start from your top head or your feet. Go down or up. Breathing techniques. Basically, that's more so dealing when I say start from your top of your head or the bottom of your feet, go up or go down. I'm more so going into where that's a grounding technique. Progressive relaxation gonna deal with starting at for instance, you start at your forehead, you're gonna go from your forehead to your mouth, to your jaw, to your neck, to your shoulders. A lot of people hold a lot of stress in their jaws and their shoulders, you know what I'm saying? But they gonna focus on releasing that through the progressive relaxation exercises. Right. And we teach that at the eFirm. We teach that at the cdcgcoachinggroup.com. Not only on the website, you may not always find those particular classes on the website, but you'll find them when we're doing the workshops across the nation. That's why we the main coaches for this, because we have the empirical evidence as the ex-felon. We know what the guys facing when they come home. We know what they trying to strive to accomplish. These youth that's coming out of these youth prisons that's going to become adult prisoners if they don't meet this E-firm. We have to get in, we have to be connected to the liberals, man. Because it's the liberal thinkers in society that's actually going to respect what an E-firm museum can do.
Right.
They're going to respect. A liberal thinker is a thinker that's willing to actually take a chance on new ideas. You know what I'm saying? And my thing is, I know that this idea is new to a lot of people. A lot of people say, well, what do a museum has to do with children doing crime? How can that stop children from doing crime? That's a good question. That's a good question that they could go to the efirm.org and actually take time to study it and learn. But even adults is not just children. Even some of the young adults with the children nowadays, they just got a TikTok mindset.
Yeah.
If they can't learn it in 30 seconds, they can't take 30 minutes out their day to really educate themselves. And they want instant gratification. They feel like putting a little time in is delaying the gratification. But you got to learn to feel the gratification in the process of getting to the manifestation of your ideas and vision. You just have to. Otherwise, I could have never produced no daggone E-Firm Museum. Or even this podcast, the P.R.E.S.S. This is a serious podcast. I call this podcast Crime Medicine.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I believe in talk therapy. So when you first got locked up as an adult, you was 22 years old?
That's right.
So you had just came home when you was 22?
Yeah, only been home for 9 months.
Only been home for 9 months.
9 months.
All right, now let me ask you something. At what point during those 22 years did you start to actually think about changing?
During the incarceration, 22 years? I mean, I'm going to say when I got probably like about 5 years in, the reality started hitting like, you ain't going nowhere for a long time. So then I started thinking about my life choices. I started thinking about mainly the future. Cause now I'm looking like, man, you ain't gonna be young when you get out now. Now you're gonna be a certain age. So, and you can't do another 22. So I started looking at the choices I had for the future and my presence. And I also thought about living. Like, I haven't lived a life yet. So I wanted to live a life, a normal life. So per se.
Right.
What we call normal.
Right.
I wanted to go out and enjoy things in life. So I said, in order for me to do that, I got to take back what's mine.
Right.
And I got to give myself the opportunity to do that.
Facts.
So that's why I started educating myself.
Facts.
I started reading. I started learning new things. I started developing skill sets while I was in there. So that way, when I was released from incarceration, I was able to develop a whole new pattern for myself. So basically, to put it in a nutshell, that's called decarceration. I had to decarcerate myself.
That's right.
I decarcerated the mind.
That's right.
I didn't want to become that mental slave and be a mental slave that they had.
Right.
Because in life, sometimes they'll tell you about the stick, but they won't tell you about the carrot, and vice versa. So I want to know about the whole thing.
Usually they'll tell you about the stick, but they won't tell you about the carrot.
Yeah.
Explain.
You know how you take a stick and put on the end of put the carrot on the stick, you dangle it in front of somebody. The carrot, the treat. You know what I'm saying? But they won't tell you about the stick. The stick, the hard part. Cause that's the stick that they poke you with and smack you with it.
Right.
They'll tell you about the treat though.
Right.
But it's in the stick. But they won't tell you about the stick.
It's like tricking the wolf.
They won't tell you exactly.
It's like tricking the wolf, putting the meat on a bloody knife.
There you go. And hanging it up.
Knowing the
keep
wolf,
licking and licking.
knowing the wolf bloodthirsty.
That's right.
The whole time the wolf licking his own blood by cutting his tongue until he bleed to death. Then they come and collect the wolf remains.
And they come get it.
Yeah, that's a fact.
You're killing yourself.
That's a fact.
You're killing yourself.
And see, a lot of the things that they put out there to us in the TV, in the movies, they put it out there on the radio to us. A lot of it is exactly that. It's that bloody meat that look like a treat. It look like a real meal.
Like a real meal.
And we start eating it and don't even know once we get to the bottom of the knife and we cut our tongue.
You start bleeding, choking yourself.
But we already tasting blood off the bloody knife from the meal that we licking, so we don't realize we tasting our own blood now.
Right.
And the next thing we know, we done killed ourselves, and there we go.
Yep. Stuck.
And so when you stuck in that cell, you got to de-incarcerate yourself. Like I said, see, I talked on one series about the incarceration psychosis and how the incarceration psychosis really have kept people, even once they get out, they really can't release themselves from the disconnect from reality that they have experienced doing incarceration in a cell.
Right.
Because it disconnects you to a degree. Some people don't even get visits.
Yeah.
Some people don't get visits. Some people don't have nobody they could call. And even those who do, no matter how much support you get, it helps. But it, to a degree, it disconnects you from society, because there are times no man wants to live every day in his incarceration and all he got is home on his mind.
Yeah.
But you do. Every day of that incarceration, you think about home.
And sometimes it keep you motivated, and sometimes it don't.
Sometimes it keep you motivated, sometimes it knock you down.
Yeah, they bring you down. Better when the holidays start coming around, you be like, whoa, birthday come around.
You got to find things that motivate you to stay up. And so what I learned, though, is that when I left prison, I would have to do a bid out here. I mean, I would have to sentence myself to a certain level of prison rules in order to keep myself out once I got out.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, they let go of that discipline that they attain in there.
Yeah.
See, once I got out here, I refused. I said, okay, nobody got to wake me up no more with a whistle. I got to wake myself up.
Yeah.
I have to get up before the sunrise. Ain't nobody blowing no whistle to count me. I'd rather wake myself up than to have a correctional officer coming around blowing a whistle, banging on the door, ready to give you a charge if you don't get up out the bed so they can
have
count
the lights on.
Because they got to know that their livestock is alive.
Yeah.
They need to know that you're breathing because they can count you because that's their money.
Yeah.
And they also would charge it in the name of saying that it's for security purpose to make sure every inmate is there. But that's that cattle you're counting.
Yeah.
That's that money. And each bed filled, for instance, in a private prison right now, is a paycheck to some investor that invested in developing that private prison and came up with that contract with the state to actually allow people to be incarcerated in that facility, as if the state don't take in enough tax money to build their own facilities to incarcerate people. First thing we got to understand, though, is when you're dealing with society of government, in many cases, it's not all government officials, but it's definitely a majority. Right. When you're dealing with a large group of people that's running these cities and running these countries and running these states, pretty much you can't come to a truth about why you become incarcerated if you don't take a real look at how not only the government officials, but the parents and the school officials are disengaged to actually making certain outside of their paycheck, they disengage to making certain that youth get to this P.R.E.S.S museum, to making sure that they can get there. And I'm just saying, it's more programs out there than just the P.R.E.S.S museum. But I don't know the ones that work and don't work. I know that this work. And why do I know it worked? Because not only is this museum came out of me as a concept, an idea that I had in my head. You know what I'm saying? Before it was reality for people to actually walk into this thought, it was in my mind. See, the thought was important, but the thought is not as important as the energy put behind the thought. Because the energy put behind the thought is what show and prove that thought existence. Right. And so when people say, yo, show and prove, I'm like, okay, show and prove what? What are you showing and proving? Because I can hear you doing a lot of talking about what you're going to do, but let me see what you're going to do. See, time tell a real story. How you use time, it reveals itself. That's why even doing time in the system of Department of Corrections, I was very cognizant that however I used that time was the best gift I could give back to people that supported me during those times. Yeah. And that because what I brung from doing those times, that investment into myself, into learning myself and learning the importance of an economic floor base, etc., develop it so I could actually make some decisions with my own life, I knew for certain that I had to do exactly what you said, de-incarcerate my mindset. And that's why I was able to set it correctly, and that's why you get the P.R.E.S.S, the Prison Release Education Sanity Series. Got it. Nice building with you, bro.
Peace.
Peace. Enter the Ex-Felon Entrepreneurship Retail Museum and pay for the education now or pay for the lawyers later. We're here to prevent that. Let's go.
Visit the eFirm at efirm.org to schedule a virtual or in-person tour. Get the knowledge and resources you need to know the ledge. Don't let your family members become an American prisoner. Pay for their education now or pay for their lawyers later at efirm.org.